Should be any second. Okay, so welcome to the Self-Publishing Roundtable. I'm your co-host, Trish McCallan, and with me tonight is Lindsay Broker. Adam Poe, who is our third co-host, is ill, so he's not going to be able to make it tonight. But we do thank him for setting the window and the hangout and everything up for us, so all I had to do was press broadcast. Our guest today is fantasy author Joseph Lallo. He's been self-publishing now for basically, it sounds like around 5 years, and has sold over 100,000 books. He has some very interesting stuff he's going to share with us tonight, including some merchandising he's experimenting with, which I think is really kind of cool. So anyway, welcome to the show, Joseph.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And why don't you go ahead and fill us in a little bit on your background, how you got into self-publishing, the series you have out there, and things like that.
Okay. Well, I started writing just in my spare time when I was very young. It was in grammar school and high school that I was writing a lot, and it filled up a pile of notebooks, which when I got to college, I learned to type, and I started typing that over into a Word document. And we're talking like 11 spiral notebooks that were handwritten, that were eventually transcribed into over 1,000 pages. And once I was finished with that, my friends were like, "You'd spend an awful lot of time and effort making this. You should probably do something with it." So I tried to traditionally publish, and I sent out a couple of dozen query letters, and I got a couple of dozen rejections. Most of them were form letters, so I wasn't terribly encouraged. Same friends who told me to try to get published told me I should try self-publishing. So that was at the beginning of 2010, and I decided the books I put together, I called them the Book of Deacon Trilogy. It was one book that I split into 3 pieces because I figured no one would buy a 1,000-page book. And I put the first one up, KDP, which at the time was DTP, Digital Text Platform. That seemed like the place to do it because I knew that Amazon and the Kindle was fairly new, but it had gotten its teeth into the market at the time. And I knew that I wanted it on there, so I did DTP, and then I wanted it everywhere else too, so I found Smashwords and put it on there. And that's where I got started in the game. And it didn't sell. The first year I made $19, which was not terribly encouraging, but it didn't really matter. I already had the other 2 books, so they were going to go out. And I messed with the price. I started at $10, and I worked my way down to $3. And I put out the next book and the book after that, and I made the first book free, and that's when it sort of exploded. And since then, I basically am perpetually working on the series that no one is reading. Like, I was working on the Book of Deacon series when no one was reading that, and then when I decided, well, that's a dud, I wrote my first sci-fi book, and then the Book of Deacon series picked up. So now I'll bounce back and forth, and it seems like the one I'm writing is the one that's cool, and the other one is warm. So I've ended up now with the Book of Deacon series, which is the trilogy, 3 books called the Book of Deacon, the Battle of Veril is the third one, and the second one is The Great Convergence. And then there's a prequel called The Rise of the Red Shadow, and a follow-up called Jade. And then I have a second series, which is sci-fi, and that's with the Big Sigma series, and that's Bypass Gemini, Unstable Prototypes, and the next one to come out is called Artificial Evolution. And then there were the 2 NaNoWriMo experiments, which will soon be 3 NaNoWriMo experiments, which are The Other 8, which is about superheroes, and Free Wrench, which is a steampunk book.
So do you have any intention then of going back and doing some more books in your Deacon series?
I do indeed. Yeah, I more or less have to do that because, like, all of my stuff is the Book of Deacon. Like, my Facebook fan page is Book of Deacon and stuff, so most of my fans are Deacon fans. And I will ask whenever it's time for a new book, I'll ask, what do people want? And most votes are always for Book of Deacon. So I actually, before NaNoWriMo started this month, I was working on the beginning stages of book 4, the follow-up to the trilogy. And I haven't got it named yet. It's still early in the process. But the next book to be finished will be the Nano project. But my next big project is the next book in the Deacon series.
Okay, so let's talk about your process a little bit. How do you start a book? Do you sit down and extensively plot it? Do you have the characters already worked out in your mind, or do you just kind of sit down and start writing?
I like to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. I don't do like a chapter by chapter summary. I've done that for the unstable prototypes. I wrote a chapter by chapter, like this is what it's going to be about, and I had a very extensive outline. That was the second book in the series, so my characters were already developed for that one. But mostly, what I'll do, and it seems to be the most standard method for me now, is I'll decide, all right, this is my premise. This is how it's going to end, and here are some key points in the middle, and very, very few, maybe 4 or 5 things written down, less than a page of outline. And then I'll develop the characters, and then I'll start writing. And the characters will usually shift and change as it goes, and the points B and C on the way to point D will change. But so I write by the seat of my pants based upon a very loose outline, but I'm not a pure pantser. I always have at least a few notes beforehand.
And then how long does it usually take you to finish a book?
That has changed. I mean, I do NaNoWriMo, so if I really put my mind to it, then I can do the 1 month, 50,000 word deal. I've succeeded twice so far. I am only recently full-time. The beginning of September, I became a full-time writer, so hopefully I'll be writing more quickly now. No guarantee that'll actually happen. But it used to take me about 15 months. I could put out a book a year, but that's because I had a backlog of books that I could put out. So, like The Rise of the Red Shadow took me about 15 months. The Unstable Prototypes only took me about 8 months. So I average about a year, but sometimes a little over.
Okay, and then how many drafts do you do of each book?
I'll do the full write through, and the first draft is going to have notes to self. I'll put 3 asterisks, and then like something I need to go back and fix, or if it's a continuation and I don't feel like looking up the facts right away, I'll put notes for that. So I'll have my first draft, and then I have to go through and read that at least once and draft through it to get rid of all of those. And then I will send it out to beta readers, and then they'll give me notes. And usually there's at least one pass at beta readers. Sometimes there's two, just because beta readers sometimes read at vastly divergent speeds. So I'll get 2 sets of notes as a result from the fast readers and from the slow readers. So that's a third draft. And then I will send it to an editor who will give me the final run through and polish it up and suggestions. And so probably, I guess, 4 drafts on average. And it'll go higher if it's a really tricky book that I have a hard time with, or NaNoWriMo, sometimes I don't really care about what beta readers might have to say, so I might skip one of those drafts. But overall, 4 is about what I do.
Okay, and so are you working like with professional cover artists as well for your covers?
I do. I am now. It's one of my favorite things, actually. When I first put my books out, I was going the absolute cheapest route, so I made my own cover, and it showed. And when it started to sell, I decided I probably should have a better cover. And I made a new one in the interim, which was a lot better than my original, but still not very good. And when I had my first sales spike, it was for about $3,000. I made $3,000 before I dropped back down to sort of negligible numbers. I decided to find an artist and see if I could get covers for the trilogy for that amount of money. And I went on DeviantArt and I found a guy called Nick DeLagaris, and he said his average per cover was going to be $1,000. So I was just going to spend all $1,000 on through all $3,000 on a new set of covers, and I have the books over here. I ended up with this, which is probably one of the reasons I'm selling as good as I am. I definitely do pro covers on all of my books now. I highly recommend it. And I also now have professional editing too, which was not there for my first release, and it showed. Also, I think once I started editing, I gained an extra star on my average rating.
How about proofreaders? Do you send it through proofreaders then after you've done the editing on it?
I should. I mean, when I do editing, the beta revision stuff is for content, and then when I send it to an editor, I do it for copy editing. I don't do developmental editing because, at least initially, I didn't have the money for it, and I just haven't tried it since then. So I might do that with a future book. But once I get it back from the copy editor, I don't usually do a full read through again because A, I'm anxious to get it out at that point, and B, if I could catch typos, I wouldn't need an editor. So I've had a few typos slip through after the editing process, which I probably could have caught if I'd been intensive in a reread. But generally speaking, once the editor has had their notes, then I assume it's good to go, and I haven't regretted that yet.
Okay, would you mind sharing who your editor is?
I had two editors. My first editor was actually I had three editors. My first editor was Anna Genoese, and she did a fantastic job. I switched away from her not because I was not happy with her work, but because became friendly with another editor named Tammy Salyer, and I just sort of moved over. Tammy, like we write similar genres, and she was a fan of some of the stuff I'd written, so I just sort of, I felt like she was more of an associate than just a business contact. So I switched over to her, and I also have been edited by a woman named Claudette Cruz, she does much more budget editing. Like if I'm very much on a tight timetable, or if it's a small release that I can't justify like scheduling time for, Claudette has done me a lot of favors in the past. So she's very good, and she's helped me out a bunch.
So have you set yourself like a production schedule for getting a certain amount of books out, during this coming year, or are you planning on like slipping some smaller works in there, maybe novellas or something like that, to try to keep your momentum going in between your big releases? Do you have anything like that planned?
The way I normally do things, I want to do at least at least one big release per year, so one main series release, and usually alternate between sci-fi and fantasy. And then I will try to do NaNoWriMo for a smaller release during this, the same time. Originally, I wasn't planning on releasing the NaNoWriMos because A, they were weird experiments, both of them, and B, they were written in a month. I wasn't sure how the quality would be. But since then, I released them both in the same year, so I had like a four-release year last year, or this year, I suppose. Um, I like novellas. That book Jade was a novella, and I like them a bunch. When I was writing and working, I had to devote all of my time to big projects because if I was ever going to make money, it was going to be on the big projects. Now that I'm working from home, and this is my full-time job, I started some smaller projects. There's a thing I have called Between, which is just once a week I put up 3,000 or so words of a chapter of a thing which I have no outline for. I just write 3,000 words and put them up. I referred to it as the bad idea exercise at first because it's just a collection of all the things I couldn't use anywhere else.
So now I know a lot of authors highly recommend like publishing a book every 2 months to every 3 months so that your rankings doesn't fall off and the sales don't fall. Have you noticed a big drop in your sales then if you're just publishing once a year?
I would say, especially, yeah, my rankings were a lot better in the past. I think some of that can just be said because overall there's a lot more people that are publishing now. Like we got into it fairly early, but yeah, if I could get a better release schedule out, I'm sure my rank would be better. I just haven't been able to. I write long books. My books average over 100,000 words and are closer to 150 most of the time. So even a full-time writer, I really have to be diligent if I'm going to hit more than one release per year. But we'll see. It's only been a few months into my new system.
Right. I'm curious about the 3,000 word things that you're putting up. Are you putting any of those into KDP Select? Now they're saying that the KDP Select Unlimited, that the shorter stuff can do very well in there. Have you tried that marketplace for any of your short work?
It's not a bad idea. I mean, right now, I'm only putting it up on Wattpad. Originally, it was just on my website, but it's not a great reading experience reading a lengthy thing on a website. So I put it up on Wattpad because they had I liked their app. The app was very much like an e-reader, and it's a decent interface. This, honestly, because I'm not really looking to make money off of it, I'm literally giving it away for free at the moment. I could totally see putting this up for some, cursory small amount and then releasing them. Yeah, I might try that. We might have to check in on that in the future.
So I take it then you're across all platforms right now.
As much as I possibly can. I try to avoid exclusivity. Yeah, Go ahead.
Oh, I was just curious what your breakdown is between Amazon and the other stores.
Um, it used to for a while I was doing actually surprisingly good. For a while I was looking at around 60% Amazon, 40% everything else. And now Amazon, like everything else, has started to slip a little bit more. So on average, it's more like 75-25 Amazon to everything else.
Yeah, that there's been a lot of people that said that once Kindle Unlimited went in, it seems like their sales have kind of really dipped. Have you got your books on Google Play?
You know, I was just literally talking to a friend of mine about that yesterday. It's the one place I'm not available because of the whole pricing situation where the price matching and discounting could be an issue. I'm planning on doing an omnibus edition, so I figure that'll be different enough that I can put that up separately and only on Google Play, and that won't screw up my price. So I will be on Google Play soon, but currently I'm not there.
Okay. They're saying that the camera is stuck on me, but I'm not seeing that it's stuck on me on my end. You're showing up. If the camera is still stuck on me, please let us know in the comments and we'll try to fix that. Um, because if I click it right now, I think it's stuck on me. But um, anyway, I'm going to go ahead and pass you over to Lindsay and she'll get into some of the marketing stuff and we'll go from there.
Okay.
All right. Hey, Joe, you're having to do a lot of talking tonight there. He's usually our
Yeah.
quiet guy on our other podcast.
I'm the quiet guy. Yeah.
But since you've been doing this for 4 or 5 years now, I'd love to kind of ask you what you first did that was effective and maybe some of the changes you've seen and what you're doing now. What did you do back in the day to get that first $3,000 check?
Well, the first thing I did, I mean, I've always tried to get very much in contact with the fans. Originally, I would read every single review, and I still probably do read most of my reviews. And I would reply to every review at the beginning, which I don't recommend for a few reasons. I mean, the reviews, especially if it's a bad review, you don't want to talk to a person who gave you a bad review. Sometimes they will backpedal and say, "Oh, I was out of line," but you're not going to argue with them. You're not going to change their opinion. And mostly, it just means that 5 years later, you'll see, "Oh, there's a new post in this discussion," and they agree with the person who hated your book. So I did that a lot. I got some new fans that way, and then I started to show up on a lot of. I did the Twitter handle, and I did a fan page. But really, making the first book free is what got me that first 3,000 sales. And then once that happened, and I started getting people commenting on my website, and I started getting people liking the fan page, then it sort of built from there. And subsequently, I've done all sorts of marketing stuff. I'm sort of like I taste test marketing.
All right, great. And have you kept your first book free all along, or is that something that you cycle in and out of?
First book has been free since May of 2011, and I mean, it may have gone off free once or twice just because Amazon suddenly just decided, nope, this is 99 cents now. But I've tried to keep it as free as possible. And I also but basically I do first book in a series free because the sci-fi series, the first book is now free. I I don't know if I'll continue to do that, but generally speaking, after a book has been out for at least a year and it's the first in a series, I try to make it as cheap as possible, if not free.
Right. And do you think today that's still as effective as it was a few years ago?
It is not nearly as effective as it was a few years ago. I mean, my first book, like with that first spike, I didn't do an ad. The first spike that I made my $3,000 and I ended up, I sold however many I sold in the first couple of days. I got picked up by a website called Pixel Inc. And there was a time early on when one blog picking you up would just cause you to explode. And again, this was not paid. They chose me because my book went free and they saw it go free. So in the beginning, it was the silver bullet, and everyone should do it. When I don't remember when I made Bypass Gemini free, the first in the sci-fi series, but it hasn't had nearly the impact. And maybe it's because I'm told sci-fi is a tougher nut to crack. But generally speaking, the real punch that free used to give, it's not as much as it was. It's still definitely valid because my trilogy is still my big earner. And the second book in sci-fi is like my fourth most successful, and that's the follow-up to another free one. So it still gets your numbers up, but you need to do more than just that now.
Right, and there's so many people out there doing it now with KDP Select, it being an option. Do you think that you never did KDP Select, did you?
Nope, I did not. Again, I try to avoid anything that was exclusive, and especially with my main stuff. Like maybe an experiment will go exclusive, but never tried KDP Select just because I hear from readers who read my stuff on Nook and on Kobo and stuff like that. So I don't want to, keep them from getting the book.
Right, I can totally understand that since I've been in the same boat all along. Does anything that's going on with Amazon now, does it have you tempted to try anything in Kindle Unlimited, like the short stories maybe, or?
Yeah, I'm tempted for anything that I don't. Well, again, because now it's paying my bills. I don't want to mess with any of my main series with stuff like that. But the shorter stuff I might try. I just want to see how it goes. I would experiment with it for some of my side stuff because I like the Netflix model of entertainment. I use Netflix, and there's a couple. There's Scribd and Oyster are two that you can get on through Smashwords. So I like that whole lending thing, and I would use it. I don't read as much as I ought to, but if I did, I would totally use it. So I do want to experiment, but I just don't want to do it with anything that could cause me to have to get a job again.
Yeah, we don't want that. You mentioned that you've kind of tried quite a few things over the years. Is there anything that stands out that was really helpful that you would recommend that other people try?
Well, I think everybody at this point recommends BookBub. I'm really impressed with BookBub. It's hard to get in, like it's not easy to get into if you're not already established because they're picky. But really, BookBub, even including that first big spike I got when I was one of only a handful of free books, BookBub has gotten me routinely. I put up an ad and I'll get 15,000 downloads in the first day or two. So BookBub is really a good punch. Especially, and this is I've at this point done 4 BookBub ads. I've put both of my books that are free. I put them up for an ad twice. So they are consistently successful even when repeated over the course of a year or so. And in the when I recently did the Book of Deacon as a BookBub ad, my sales went up by 50%, and they stayed that way for a month. It was remarkable to me. So BookBub has been very successful. Nothing else has even really come close.
Okay, and I know you've been involved in the story bundles a couple of times. Would you like to talk about that and let people know what that is exactly and how that worked for you?
Sure. Well, first I'll start off how I got in there, and I should say nothing else has ever come close. In terms of earning money, Story Bundle has beat BookBub, but Story Bundle is sort of an outlier. A while ago, there's a thing called Humble Indie Bundle, which is great for buying games. And I talked to them, a friend of mine, the same ones that convinced me to publish, told me you should talk to them and see if they'll ever do a book bundle. So I discussed it with them, and they said, well, if we'll let you know. And they have, by the way, done plenty of book bundles since then, and they never let me know. But that's okay. I'm small fry. They're getting people like Neil Gaiman and Brandon Sanderson. But then we found out about a guy who was going to be doing one just for books called Story Bundle. He was opening submissions. So at the time, my recent release was Bypass Gemini, and I gave it to him. And a couple of weeks later, he comes back, and he's like, I got 25% of the way through, and it's in. It's definitely in. So the way Story Bundle works and the way all these bundles work is it's a bundle of books, usually 4 to 6 authors, maybe 6 to 8 books, and you pay what you want. There's some minimum. Usually it's $1, and we also put a maximum of $100 on Story Bundle. You choose what you're going to pay, and you choose how much of it goes to the authors versus how much goes to the website. You can also check a box to give some of it to charity. And then it's a limited time bundle. Once it's over, it's done. The bundles don't come back. And so it's like this little scarcity model because it's a limited time, so people want to jump on it. And it's as cheap or as expensive as they want. And it really worked really rather well. Like every book that I've put into a full-scale bundle, because he also does mini bundles. Every book I've put into a full bundle, I've been able to pay for the cover and the editing based on the money I made from that bundle. So they work really well in terms of earning money. I've gotten tons of feedback from people who got my stuff because of a bundle. Plenty of times not because they wanted my book, but they wanted some other book in the bundle, and they ended up reading mine because it came with it. And so the bundles work very well. The story bundle in particular, and any of the bundle sites, I really recommend to earn money and to get a little bit of exposure. It's not going to be a career maker. Mine wasn't, but it'll put money in your pocket and it will expand your readership.
Great, and that's storybundle.com, is that right?
Storybundle.com, yep.
And is that by invitation only, or can people apply to be in a bundle?
You can submit. There is a submission page, and he still accepts submissions. The guy's name is Jason Chen, by the way. He still accepts submissions. It's somewhere on his site. You can find that. And what will also happen is it can be by invitation. He will ask back successful authors to curate future bundles. So a lot of people will get in because they're a friend of or the author who's in it previously was a fan and wants you in a future one. And there's also, the bundles always have themes. So occasionally they'll get like 4 people who want to be in a bundle, and they need to get a 5th and 6th, and they'll put out a call for submissions. And most recently they've been experimenting with NaNoWriMo. 2 months after NaNoWriMo last year, they put out a call for people who finished NaNoWriMo because they're going to do a bundle of NaNoWriMo books. And I actually curated that bundle for him last year. We might be doing that again.
All right, well, great. Have you experimented at all with going in, like forming a bundle on your own, or going in with any of the other authors doing these multi-bundle sets on Amazon that are so popular right now, like 10 books for 99 cents?
I had not done it before, and it kind of bit me in the butt because there was I've ended up working with, I've been part of promotions with Apple on iTunes in the past, and an opportunity came up to do a promotion for bundles, and I didn't have a bundle at the time. So I am in a bundle that is getting put together right now. It's not finished yet, and I don't know if it's ready for prime time. But so I will be experimenting with that, and I know that it's been very successful for a lot of other people. So hopefully it'll be successful for me too.
All right, hopefully so. I assume you've had a mailing list and all that good stuff that you're supposed to have as an author. Any thoughts on, do you have a mailing list, and who do you use if you do?
I do have a mailing list. It's I should have had it from the start. Honestly, if I had had it during that first big punch, I'd be in a much better position right now, but I didn't know any better. I use MailChimp, and I recommend the mailing list. Number one, MailChimp is good because it's got statistics, so you can see how effective your stuff is actually being. It'll tell you how many people open it and how many people click through. And I find that just a lot of people are much more receptive to email than social media. I guess because it goes straight to their mailbox. So I've seen, I've announced pre-orders through the mailing list, and I've seen a lot more impact from sending out a mailing than I have from just announcing it on Twitter or on the fan page.
Yeah, I would definitely agree that it seems like a lot of people who won't follow you on social media will actually sign up to your list, and sometimes, especially like the older crowd, can be less into the Twitter and that sort of thing. But yeah, I'm curious myself as someone who's just starting in science fiction on the side. It sounds like Book of Deacon is sort of your primary series that's really sold the best. Any thoughts on getting your fans to cross over, or have you had luck with that, or any recommendations for people trying to do that?
I have had a fair amount of luck with crossover. I would say that probably half of the audience for the sci-fi series got to it via my fantasy series. And I mean, there's all the standard stuff. I list all of my books of all of my series at the end, like in the back matter. So if you get through and you get to the part where I'm talking to at the end of a book, then you'll see that I do have a sci-fi series. And it's funny because I get a lot more reverse traffic. Like, I will get a lot of people who will start an email to me saying, "Oh, well, you say in the back of your sci-fi book that fantasy is your first love," and blah 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 blah. Like, so there is some cross traffic. People will follow on if they like you as a writer. And in terms of, some people just are genre specific and they just won't cross over. But if you make it clear that it's sort of the same, this is a Joe Lallo book. If you like my other stuff, this is going to be a little bit more like this, a little bit more like that. There'll be a little bit more humor, a little more action. Then your fans will read that stuff, and that's really the only. I haven't had any like magic trick to get people to read all of the books, but if people like what you're writing, then they'll usually follow you over, at least in some degree. And then once they're up there and they're talking about it and they're reviewing it, then the book starts to pick up on its own. You start to get these parallel audiences.
All right, that's cool. Just a couple more questions, then I'm going to hand you back over to Trish. But I would love to know, because I know you've published a steampunk book this year and superheroes. Do you feel that to gain any traction, do you need to do a series, or is it possible just to do well with a one-off book right now?
I really got to say that the series seems like the way it's going to be. I have two one-book things, and both of them, to be fair, both of them read like a pilot episode of a TV series. Like they seem more like the introduction novel of a series than a standalone. But I have found that at the very least, creating a cast of characters that seems to have the ability to continue automatically seems to get people a lot more interested than just a fully encapsulated thing. My one-off books are my least successful books right now, by far. So I really think that a series is the way to go, or at the very least, if you can't do a series, a set of books with the same sort of theme, maybe the same framing device, like set in the same setting. But generally, yeah, getting people hooked with an early book and then having them follow you through a series seems like it's still sort of necessary. Maybe not, because I haven't. Maybe it's just me that I haven't had that much success elsewhere. But yeah, I recommend the series still.
Yeah, I think that's pretty common. And of course, you can't do the perma-free if you only have one book in the series, so you don't get to play with that. All right, my last question for me is, when it comes to marketing and publishing, now looking back over a few years, just do you have any lessons you've learned, things you've maybe done wrong, or things that have done really right that you kind of would like to share with us?
Yeah, things that have done wrong. Again, you should probably start off with at least the ability to have a mailing list. I honestly didn't start it until about a year ago, and I had a couple of spikes in my history without having a mailing list available for those people to carry on. So, mailing list very important at the beginning. That's a mistake I made. Successes I've made. You should take a chance at various different things. I did not have high hopes for BookBub. I didn't even think BookBub would pick me up. So I like the perma-free is a good idea, even if it's not as successful as it was. B, pushing your free novel through various ways, through any advertising you can think of. Maybe it will work, maybe it won't. Don't go all in on one kind of advertising. And that's about it. Is early book in the series free, write in the series, and then push the free one through a lot of experimental means and see which works and which doesn't.
All right, great advice. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm going to hand you to Trish, and you get to show off your plushies now.
Yeah, I got a pile of them over here.
Oops, you're muted, Trish.
Lindsay had mentioned that you're doing some merchandising with your characters, which really interested me a lot. So could you kind of fill us in a little bit on why you decided to do this and what you actually did?
Sure. Again, I like to talk to my fans a lot, and on the Facebook fan page, I asked about merchandise because I didn't want to make money. I just wanted to make things. So I was like, what would you people be interested in? And I have a lot of characters that are much more popular than other characters. And a lot of people said to me, well, we'd like to see Min, which is a dragon. We'd like to see Min stuff, and a stuffed animal would be fantastic. So it's like, a stuffed animal would be fantastic. I have no idea how to do that. And that's sort of where it started. I mean, there were attempts at posters as well, which are probably a better idea because they're smaller and cheaper and all that. But I wanted to do a plush. So it started with asking the fans and then doing a lot of research.
And how did you end up doing your plush toys?
First I went on, again, DeviantArt. It's a very good place if you're looking for artists. I thought it was just graphic art, but it turns out sculptors and plush artists and everyone else is there. And then I looked for people who looked like they had stuff in their gallery that would fit the design I had in mind. And I reached out to one, and we worked together, and then I paid her, and then she didn't give me anything. So that one didn't work out so well. But then I did some more research. I found some people who were recommended. Always look to see if other people recommend them. And we decided to experiment with the less popular characters. I have a cute character in my sci-fi series called a Funk, and I found a plush artist named Amy, which her studio is Bubble Rhapsody Creations, I think, and I had her make a prototype of the Funk, which looks like this. It's cute, and it worked out pretty well. I like it. It's even got one of these little tags down here, very professional. So I was very happy, and then I started researching how much. I mean, this costs about $150, so no one's going to buy this handmade. So I started looking to see how much it costs to get manufactured in small batches, and it turns out an awful lot because they don't want to talk to you unless you do over 1,000. So I set the whole thing aside. But then somebody told me that I should try actually doing the dragon that everyone actually wanted. Maybe there would be enough interest that I could justify 1,000 of them. So I had her make the dragon, which is right there. It's smaller to try to make it cheaper, and I really like the way it came out. But it still costs about the same because it's much more detailed. It's got like these glass eyes, and it's got scales on its belly. So the money was working out the same. I wouldn't have been able to sell enough of those to make the money back, or I'd have to charge $80 for them, and no one's going to pay that. So then I was like, well, what if we go even smaller? And she has a design. She calls them derpy. So I made these little guys. They're teensy, of both of my characters. I'm getting a pile of stuffed animals at this point. And those, again, these are, I don't know, they probably would have cost about $20 each, which is that's $20 is too much for these. So up until recently, that was the end of the plush thing. There's a bunch of prototypes, but nothing I can sell. We've moved. There's a new chapter in the plush saga now. I asked her to do a simpler design, one of these, but not as complex, to see if we could get it cheaper. So she did one, and it's got embroidered eyes like that first one did. And then I started talking to a place called Gant Memorials, and they are willing to do 250 of these things. And that would be $20 a piece, and I think people would pay $20 a piece. So we are in the early stages of a Kickstarter at this point. So no guarantees anything will ever come of it, but we've reached the point where we have a valid design and a potential manufacturer.
Well, that's just pretty darn cool.
It's neat.
Very curious to find out how that ends up turning out. At the very least, they'd make some really nice little giveaways for some of your fans.
Yeah, if everything, if I don't sell one of these, I end up with a garage with 250 stuffed animals in it. I'm totally going to do some awesome giveaways.
Yeah. So now she mentioned something about 3D, that you were doing some 3D stuff as well.
That's right. I got those over here too. I didn't at first think this was going to be potentially a product, and it probably still won't be, but I had, again, we'll recognize here, right here. So we have the stuffed animal that I made, and I wanted to make a figurine, just because I wanted to have basically a figurine. I had some extra money, so I got a sculptor to make a little figurine of the same character. It's crazy detailed too. It's got this little thing. This is loose. I like it. So that's Min. I made that. And the fans went completely nuts over it, not because it would be available, just because they really liked how it looked. So I worked with her again, and the other cute animal ended up getting its own figurine, which is super duper cute. And it's got painted toenails, because the character does in the book. And then continued to be successful. So I got another character from the fantasy series, got its own figurine. And I recently found out there's a place called Shapeways. Shapeways is a 3D printing studio, I suppose, and they will do full-color 3D prints. And while it's not exactly affordable, something about this size and about this detail would cost about $60. So, I mean, well, this cost me over around 100, so $60 is better. So that might be happening to an artist I know named Bill Plimpton. He's an animator. Just started selling these things, and I got to hold one. They look really cool. It's like they're made out of stone. So 3D printing is potentially making figurines a possibility.
So now, how about merchandising on other stuff? Like if you tried to do T-shirts or like signias on canvas bags or any of the stuff that some of the other authors have been given a try?
I am set up. I currently am set up for a thing called Zazzle, which is like Cafe Press. It's all that stuff. It's mugs and T-shirts and everything. I never really made the storefront available for everyone because A, I wasn't happy with the graphic design I have available to me right now. I buy my images, with the exception of the first book cover, which I own the full rights for. I only buy promotion rights for this stuff, so I'm not allowed to make any money off of them. So I kind of want to make sure the product is of a high enough quality that it would be justifying me dropping an extra $500 to be allowed to make products of it. So in the future, there will be T-shirts and hats and all that stuff, but I haven't officially opened the doors of that storefront yet.
Yeah, I actually had something designed by my Spirit Woods artist just to use on T-shirts and canvas bags and stuff like that. So she designed me an image just to use for that that isn't really an actual book cover. It's just kind of something that's set in that world. It's going to be very interesting. So far, the response from the fans has been really strong on the giveaways because I've been giving some away for the release of the little novella. But I was really curious what sales would be like on those kind of things, whether the fans kind of transfer through on that or not.
From what I've heard, it's from people I know who also do it. It's not usually a moneymaker. Like they're not paying any bills with what they make from merchandise, but it's a way to give fans stuff. It's a way for fans to be able to have stuff, and it's just more or less another thing in your bag of tricks.
Right, talking about fans, how do you interact with your fans? Do you do like Google Hangouts with them and signings like you, Howie, does? Do you meet them at conferences? Do you do book signings? How do you actually try to reach out to your fans?
I do the whole social network thing. I will answer any email that anyone sends me. I'm on Tumblr and Instagram and a couple other places. Facebook obviously. So I talk to fans like that. I sell autographed copies of my books via my website, so they can get them that way. Also, there's a thing called Authorgraph, so you can get digital autographs. I'm on that as well. I just signed a couple of those not too long ago. I have met fans. I don't like get a booth at conferences, but I'm fairly close to New York City, so I'm able to get to a lot of big ones. And I'll attend with a professional tag, and I'll announce before I go. Well, I'm going to be at New York Comic Con all 4 days. Is anyone else going? Now, if they are, I met 4 fans at the last NYCC, so I definitely like meeting fans. I just don't know that I have a large enough fan base to do like an actual physical signing. I feel like that would be, a story to tell about a failure. If I was set up a date at a library or something, I'd just be sitting there with my hands crossed with a pile of books and nobody online.
What about like audio books or translations? Have you tried anything like that?
I have got audiobooks for the trilogy and for the follow-up. The follow-up, Jade, I produced myself. I went on ACX, Audible Creators Exchange, ACX, and I haven't found them to be big money makers. I was actually traditionally published for the 3 books of the trilogy through a place called Tantor Audio, and they have made their money back. I got my advance, and now they're all earning. But again, they're not paying any bills. They're just sort of a little supplemental thing. And then translations. I have been translated into Bulgarian, actually. Around the same time they asked for my audio rights, somebody from MBG Books asked if I was willing to sell the translation rights to Bulgarian. And it's the only place where my book is on bookstore shelves is in Bulgaria.
Oh, that's funny. I have a German copy of my book sitting up there, and it's, nobody can read it.
Yeah. So they actually were supposed to send me author copies, obviously, and apparently they got stuck in customs. So somebody has got a pile of 6 Bulgarian books with my name on them.
Well, maybe they read them, and then they're recommending you to their Bulgarian friends. You never know.
It could be.
So
I have at least one fan artist who is Bulgarian.
So what do you have planned coming up here? Are you planning on trying any new series? It sounds like you're moved into science fiction and you've got plans for working on that first series. What about any other series coming up?
I've got like my first two NaNoWriMos, as I said. One of them was the other eight, which is about superheroes, and the second was Free Wrench. And while Free Wrench was not a huge moneymaker, it did catch the eye of a few people. It was one of the best books of the month on iBooks in Australia and New Zealand, oddly enough. So I asked the fans if there was any books they'd like to see me follow up with a sequel, and they picked Free Wrench. So Free Wrench is going to be the book two is what I'm writing right now, and for NaNoWriMo is so Free Wrench might be a new series depending on whether I'm happy with how it comes out. And it's not unlikely that I will eventually take the Book of Deacon series and do a follow-up trilogy that's far removed from the original, like same setting but entirely new cast of characters with no overlap. I don't know if you'd call that a new series, but certainly a new thread. So that's something that's sort of on the back burner, but might turn up in the next year or so.
Right. Are you doing anything to try to kind of bring your fans into your newsletter? I know a lot of people are giving away stuff. Like I give away free novellas to my newsletter list that are for sale on Amazon. Have you tried anything like that to increase your newsletter size?
Yeah, I have. It's worked pretty well too. First I got my cover artist to do an exclusive desktop image, like wallpaper, and I gave that away to people on it. And then I'd been asked to submit books to two different anthologies, and so I had two short stories in the Book of Deacon setting, and one of them the rights just reverted back to me, so now that's available for free to people who sign up, and then eventually the other one will revert back to me. So yeah, I give away stories and artwork to the fans who sign up for the newsletter.
And do you see a big spike on your releases after you've sent a newsletter out?
I see, yeah, especially I have only had the newsletter around for one official release, and at the time I probably only had like 80 people on it, but I got like 30 buys from that release thing, and my newsletter is a lot larger now. I have seen, I'll traditionally see a little blip. I've mentioned two pre-orders since it's been out, and I'll see a little blip in pre-orders that I can definitely attribute to the newsletter. So it has a definite impact. It's not. I'm sure if I ever get 5,000 or 10,000 people on there, it's going to be an impact that'll really help me out. But as it is right now, it sort of gets me my first dozen or so purchases and my first 2 or 3 reviews.
Okay, talking about the pre-orders a little bit, have you had a pre-order then that has actually gone live?
I pre-ordered the Rise of the Red Shadow, which that was like I was in the beta for Smashwords pre-orders, so that was pre-ordered by about 2 months, and I couldn't really tell you if it had much of an impact because I didn't know if that book was going to have an impact to begin with. It was a prequel, and those don't always have people follow them over. I've also pre-ordered both of the Nano experiments I released, again just on Smashwords. And I'm running a pre-order right now for the third book in my sci-fi series, which is going to release almost a month. December 18th is the release date, and that's on Amazon pre-order as well as everything else. And I'm seeing a fair amount of interest in it. I've seen 157 pre-orders so far in the month and a half that it's been available. So we'll see how that turns out around December when it finally releases. How much of an improvement that is for my first day sales.
Yeah, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of kind of contradiction on the pre-orders. Some people that have been really for it, some people that have felt that it has hurt their launch because it's kind of gutted their first day sales because their fan base, it had already bought it on pre-order. So it'll be interesting to see if you feel it hurts or helps your launch.
Yeah, it'll be. What I'm really interested in is my day one ranking because supposedly, they told me when they were doing it on iTunes and Barnes and Noble and Kobo will all do pre-orders through Smashwords. The way it's supposed to work is all of your pre-orders count as a day one sale.
Right.
So I don't know if Amazon does that.
Amazon doesn't. Your pre-orders on Amazon count as a sale towards the day it's pre-ordered. So on the day that it releases, you get the pre-orders, but you don't get it counted towards your rank.
Well, we'll see. We'll
Yeah.
see. We'll see what I like and dislike about my release coming up. It's my secondary series, so I don't live and die by its success. But we'll see if it seems like it improved or disimproved things. At the very
Yeah.
least, hopefully it'll get me a couple of rather expedient reviews.
Yeah, that is the nice thing for pre-orders. The other nice thing I've been hearing is there a good way to test your cover and your blurb? You know, if your cover and your blurb isn't working, then um,
Yeah, that's a good point.
always change them during your pre-order stage. There was a question here. How much of earnings do you get from the other retailers? I think you said that you got about 60% from Amazon and 40% from the rest of them. Does that still stay current, or has that changed?
I would say at my peak that was the case. I had some really good success in both iBooks and Barnes and Noble for a while. Lately, those have been dipping. I think based on the last month or two, it's closer to 75% Amazon, 25% other stuff, which I still feel is good enough to justify not being exclusive to Amazon, but not as good as it's been in the past. And that can all turn around with one quick spike because, again, I've had the only really high-profile promotion I've ever had was from iBooks, and so a good iBooks promotion will suddenly get you in the top 10 for your genre on iTunes, and then you'll have a really good month for your split that month.
Yeah, I have a friend that got promoted on iTunes, and it did really, really well for her. Lindsay, did you have any questions that you wanted to chime in on before? We're almost getting up to the hour mark.
Sure. I was just kind of wondering, going off that last question, what are your recommendations for actually doing well on iTunes and Barnes & Noble and Kobo? Because I know a lot of people really struggle to sell any books there.
Well, the first thing it really helps is to be extremely lucky, but that's kind of hard to do that on purpose. I have found iTunes has got some magic things that they prefer when they talk to you. They'll actually send you a thing about how they like to be promoted. They like to make sure you use all of the terminology correctly. You can sort of schmooze a given retailer if you're at all in contact with them by having their link first on your page for like, oh, available from these places, and you throw, buy it on iBooks as the top one. They're suddenly very happy about that. But generally, I would just say it's good to have price parity across the whole place, and don't just promote with links to Amazon. Promote with links to all of the places. I've actually gotten letters from people who live in countries where they just can't get their hands on anything from Amazon. Amazon won't accept their credit cards. So, but they can get it through Kobo. So, I can't say that I have any. I've had any technique to get really good sales in the other places, but being available from there from the start, and it's just really about letting them have your books, and not taking your books away from them at any point.
All right, good advice. And my last question for you is, how was the bacon dark chocolate bar?
It was extremely good. It was good enough, but I bought two. I bought two of these little whatever. Mine wasn't dark chocolate. Mine was milk chocolate. But
Oh,
I
okay.
bought two of these, and everyone in the house was curious, so that's why I bought two, because I ate the first one by myself, and everyone else will be sharing the other one. So I recommend bacon chocolate. Give it a shot. And now somebody told me about chocolate-covered wavy lays, which I'm gonna have to get my hands on.
Okay, this actually kind of brings up a question for me. Do you have any rituals? Like, say you have a book that actually comes online, a book that's released. Do you have a ritual or anything that you do? Do you have rituals with your writing?
I have rituals with my writing. I will, especially. I say that I have points A, B, C, and D, or whatever, a handful of stuff that I will base an entire book around. Almost invariably, the action scenes come from music. So I will seek out music that's appropriate for a book, and especially early on in the process, I will go for like a 2-mile long walk and just cycle through all the songs I think are going to give me juice for that book. So that's one of my prep rituals. And in terms of release, I basically just stare at the computer and hit F5 on statistics pages. That's about all I have going for releases right now, aside from the standard tell everybody in every way I can possibly think of.
How about playlists? Do you put the music that you write your fight scenes to on a playlist for your fans?
I have not done that. It's an excellent idea. I really should. I should put together a blog post at some point and let people know, A, here are the songs that inspired the music, that inspired the scenes that you read, and B, what are the songs you listen to while you're reading, because that sort of interests me. I should really put that stuff together.
Well, that's kind of all the questions I have for you today. How about Lindsay? Did you have anything more? Is there anything more from the website?
Nope, it's pretty quiet out there tonight, and I got my bacon chocolate question answered, so all the wisdom has been, that's all I need from Joe.
Okay, one thing we were going to do a little bit differently since we've changed the format of the show is that when one of the hosts has a release or a pre-order, we were going to kind of touch on what we did and the results from that. And I actually just put a pre-order up last Friday. It went live last Friday. And it's a little bit of an interesting experiment because it's for a novella in my Red Hot Seal series, but the novellas are going to be free to my newsletter list. So before I put the book up free, I actually emailed my newsletter list and told them it was going up, but not to buy it because they'd be getting it for Christmas. And what I've discovered is that there is still a lot of people that pre-order it that are obviously not on my newsletter list. They're not following me on Twitter. They're not following me on Facebook. So it almost seems like the sales, that the sales are still there even though your newsletter, Facebook, your followers are not going to be buying it. So I've kind of decided that I'm going to be releasing these little novellas once a month just because the sales have been, the pre-orders have been quite good on it, and my fans are like absolutely thrilled that they're getting it for free. So it's kind of doing double duty. And I would really highly recommend this. I'm exclusive to Amazon because I write for like Romance, which is an Amazon publishing imprint. And part of the reason this novella, I think, is doing so well is because Amazon has the 2 books that are in that series on their 100 books for under $3.99. So there's been a lot of movement on those books, and then the people that have bought those books seem to be finding the novella through my Author Central page. They're not going to my website, however, so they are not signing up for my newsletter because I haven't been getting any cancellations on these pre-orders, and it makes me realize that there's a big difference between your fans, your true fans that are following you on your newsletter and on Facebook and Twitter versus the people that don't ever go to your website and they just pick your books up. And I think you can probably do both, and you can probably at least make enough money from these little novellas or whatever you're giving away to pay the cost of production. That was my main hope, is I would sell enough to pay for the cost of production on them. And I'm going to be paying for the cost of production on it within the first 2 weeks from the way the pre-orders are going right now. So I think that it's a distinct opportunity, especially if you're in Amazon Select, because pre-orders or because novellas and the short stories, the shorter fiction, seems to be doing so well in the unlimited and with the borrows. And keeping in mind that this thing hasn't even hit the borrows yet. I'd originally put it in there because I was waiting for it to hit the borrows. And it hasn't even been borrowed, and yet still the sales have been really well on it. So it's kind of opened my eyes to the fact that you can do both. I think you can give them away to your newsletter list, you can build your newsletter list, and sell them at the same time, and you'll make some money on it.
Oh, congratulations, Trish. That's great that you're having a great pre-launch.
It's been quite amazing, actually, considering that I actually told my newsletter list not to buy it, you know, so you kind of count on your newsletter list to push sales. So I wasn't expecting there to be too many pre-orders because my whole newsletter list wasn't going to buy it. But people are finding it. They're finding it through Author Central and through the Also bots and stuff. And I think you can do both, and I think it's going to work quite well. I just wanted to bring that up because I think everyone has that opportunity.
Right, and I've definitely seen that too, where no matter how much you lobby and say, come join my mailing list and follow me in these sites and stuff, you'll end up getting a lot more sales of a book than people that ever actually come and sign up. And I think too, you'll find that I've definitely had people email me, even if I give them something free, like I'll put it up on my website first as a Christmas present or something, and they'll still go buy it for 99 cents from Amazon, and they'll tell you that, I just want to support you and I appreciate your writing. So it's really, really great.
Yeah, I've actually had a couple people tell me that too. I've told them all that they'll be getting it on December 24th. Actually, the 23rd, because the novella will release on Amazon on the 24th. But I've had a couple there tell me too that they're going to buy it because they want to support me with their money. So that's kind of nice too. They seem to feel invested in you if you're making an effort to kind of give them stuff, I think.
Right. How are you handling? How are you going to handle giving it to your list? Give them like a link to your website where they download it, or?
I'm going to give them a link to a page that it's going to be on there where they can download it. It's not going to be on my website, but it'll be on a separately hosted place. But the other thing I've decided I'm going to do, because I'm going to do these novellas once a month, and I'm going to put them up for sale on Amazon at the same time that they go out free to my newsletter. But I'm going to pull them down when the next novella comes up. So they're not going to be retroactive. The people that join my newsletter now aren't going to be able to get the novellas from, 2 or 3 months ago. But one of these novellas will go up each month, and who's ever in my newsletter list for that month will get it for free. And hopefully I'll be getting enough sales and borrows through Amazon to pay for it at the same time, which actually seems like it's going to be the case. It seems like there's quite a bit of sell-through there.
All right, great. I look forward to hearing about it. I got to start thinking in terms of novellas. I'm kind of like Joe. I'm 90,000 words into my NaNoWriMo novel, and it's not over yet.
Well, the funny thing is I was intending to give these novellas anyway away to my newsletter list. I hadn't really considered that they would bring in very much money. But the strength of the pre-orders has made me think that I'm really better off doing one of these a month and putting it up for sale, because I think they're just going to kind of escalate. And at the same time, I'm constantly building my list then, because my followers will get this for free. I probably got an extra 100 subscribers to my email list in the last week that have heard that these are coming out. So, that's kind of nice as well.
Sounds great. Yeah, I definitely look forward to hearing how it goes in the future too.
Anyway, that's pretty much my report for the week. Did you have anything, Lindsay? I know you had a book not too long ago that launched.
Oh no, just my pen name stuff, which I'm not coming out of the closet with until Christmas. So, but it's doing well. I'll share about it on my site pretty soon.
Okay, you're going to have a big spoiler then when you actually come out with your pen name?
Yeah, I told everybody I'd send it out to the newsletter at Christmas, so if they're interested, they can go buy it. I don't know how much crossover there'll be, but we'll see.
Yeah. So how about you, Joe? Do you have anything coming out within the next couple of months? You mentioned you got something coming out at Christmas, don't you?
Yep, I got Artificial Evolution, which is the third book in the sci-fi series. That's going to come out December 18th. It's on pre-order now, and it'll be interesting to see how that releases. And I don't know when the assuming that I complete NaNoWriMo, I'm ahead of my word count, but I don't know if I'm going to hit the end of the plot by the end of the month. Assuming that gets done, that'll probably have a release of early next year, just because I'm not going to really have to sit on that and do a lengthy pre-order because it's not a major release. And
where can people find you, Joe?
My website is bookofdeacon.com, and I'm also at Jr. Lallo on Twitter and virtually any other social network. Jr. Lallo is usually how you'll find me. So yeah, just search for everything is linked also on my webpage. So best place to go if you want to find out where else I am is just bookofdeacon.com.
Okay, that sounds great. We sure appreciate you coming on and kind of telling us your story here this week.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
And I'd really like to see what you end up doing with these little plush toys. So we'll keep in contact and maybe have you on later after you've got that stuff kind of squared away.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it goes. I'm looking forward to the Kickstarter if we can get it going.
Yeah. All right, well, everyone, that's pretty much it for today. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them on the website in the comment section. And as always, we really appreciate any reviews on YouTube or iTunes. As for the iTunes, they should be getting uploaded fairly soon. I know we've got quite a leg going on, but we've got someone working on that said they'd be having them uploaded here shortly. And Adam's been sick, so he hasn't really had a chance to do anything with the iTunes yet, but he will be taking that over as soon as he starts feeling better and kind of gets up to speed on it. Anyway, thanks everyone for watching and listening, and we'll see you in a week. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.